Okay, another night, more draft videos. This time we're on team number 12, so we're getting there. I guess we still got team number 4, and then 13, 14. We'll see if we get there. I think we can get 12 and 13, though, tonight. But in the meantime, team number 12, so obviously it's Rich. We went over that. He already went ahead and changed his name to Unanswered Questions. Really, it's not terribly nuanced. It's just the one question that kind of popped into my head after the draft last year. So it's more of a rhetorical question than anything else. But the question simply is, do you know who Mike Davis is? Now, Mike Davis is currently, today, the starting running back for the Atlanta Falcons. But why is that important to Rich? What does that mean? And the answer is this. So last year, Rich had the number 2 overall pick. He drafted Christian McCaffrey. But at no point in time did he pick up his backup, or, as we call it in Fantasyland, the handcuff. You know who his handcuff was? Mike Davis. What happened to Christian McCaffrey? He got hurt, and Sarah spent a bunch of waiver money, free agent auction budget money, to pick up Mike Davis. And it helped keep her team afloat. Now, granted, Rich ended up trading McCaffrey and getting a pretty good haul, and it helped him get into the back end of the playoffs. But the point is, did Rich learn the lesson of last year? Does he know who Mike Davis is? And the answer is no. And I can say that resoundingly because this year Rich drafted a running back, instead with auction money, very high. But at no point in time did he pick up the handcuff or the backup running back to him. So obviously different year, same mistake. And that kind of just defines to me that I know you didn't do any research, and that you're kind of just middling along. Maybe you'll make the playoffs again, a back-end team, but unfortunately it kind of just defines your team. Do you know who Mike Davis is? And the answer is no. I guess you could say now you do, but, probably going into the draft you might have known, but in the context of, do you know what it means to back up and properly build out a team? And the answer is no. But we'll get into it. So, who was that lucky running back who went very high to Rich? Personally, I like him quite a bit. It's Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is not terribly an efficient running back. I'll be completely honest. He leads the league in most rushes for a yard or 2 yards. Case in point, go back and watch the Ravens playoff game last year where they just stuffed the line and dared Tennessee to try and pass, and then Tennessee decided to punt the ball in the fourth quarter because they're not aggressive. They're not aggressive enough. Now, that's not to say his fantasy points last year wasn't incredible. He was the number 2 fantasy player at running back. He had over 2,000 yards. He had 17 touchdowns. He led the league in carries, rush yards, rushing touchdowns the last 2 years, despite only getting 55 targets, so roughly 20 catches a season. But the lack of receiving work, even in half PPR, because he gets so much volume as a rusher, we overlook it. He has been elite. He's a great player in the sense that sometimes he can break it off. He reminds me, if we're going to go back to someone, he reminds me of old school Earl Campbell, Houston Oilers, the Go Blue team that got into that went to a Super Bowl. If we're going for more recent, Brandon Jacobs, but maybe a longer version of Brandon Jacobs. Hopefully, running backs have a short shelf life. He's 27, so he's on the back end of his prime. To give you a case in point, basically at 27, that was the year Le'Veon Bell signed with the Jets, so that gives you an idea. Oof. But hopefully, he doesn't hit that cliff, and he keeps just going on with the volume. We like Derrick Henry. 72 for Derrick Henry, we don't mind it, especially considering the prices on running backs. So, hey, you got a stud running back. Draft pick number 2. number 20, so 20th nomination, you spent 58 on Tyreek Hill. Now, I like Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is tremendous. He's just so fast, and obviously he gets a ton of touches. He can break open a game. He might have, honestly, if the Chiefs had kept the pedal to the metal against the Bucs, he might have broken the receiving record for a game last year, because Hill was just off to a gangbuster start to that game. But he's also 27. He was the number 2 fantasy wide receiver last year, behind Devontae Adams. But he was just incredible. He gets you lots of touchdowns. So honestly, with Sammy Watkins now gone and the offensive line relatively fixed, I think he gets more catches. I think he gets 95 catches. I think he gets more yards. So 1,300 yards. I think the touchdown regression will be more because he got 15 touchdowns. It's a really, really high number. That's like a touchdown a game. So I don't think he'll get you that many. But, I could see like 11. He might even get some rushing yards too. Maybe even like 100 rush yards on some reverses or screens or what have you. So Tyreek Hill is the most explosive player in the NFL. He's probably the fastest player in the NFL. And he's the best deep threat in the NFL. So yeah, no. He and Patrick Mahomes are a perfect fit. Mahomes has a cannon for an arm. The most talented quarterback with arm strength probably ever. It's either him or John Elway. And Hill's probably among the fastest and best deep threats ever. He's like James Jett, who was a track star and then joined the Raiders back in the 80s. It's kind of like that. So I think 58's a lot for a receiver. I mean, it's the most of anyone that's spent on any player at... Excuse me, it's late. Most of anyone who's spent at receiver. So I assume you might have been fighting off the auction draft. I don't even remember. Honestly, it's been over 2 weeks. It's been over a week now. But yeah, 58 receiver, it's a lot, but excellent receiver. So you got potentially the number 1 running back in fantasy, potentially the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. Okay. What else we got? At 38, we got George Kittle, $19. I mean, Kittle's, for $19, that's a really good deal. Like, he's probably relatively like a number 2 receiver, so to get him for on the cheap like that, like around what someone's paying for, like what Hannah's paying for, like Chris Godwin or some of the other receivers. I mean, just based off simply, despite being injury plagued and missing games last year, he's still an excellent player. I think he'll get his 80 receptions, his 1,000 yards, and like his 6 or 7 touchdowns. So he's never cleared 5 touchdowns in a season, but his heavy volume and his yardage really, really helps. And even if he is a tight end, he's such an elite one that you don't mind it. He's like, I don't mind the price. I think it's around a pretty decent price. Yeah, because he's equivalent essentially to like Chris Godwin, which is the best equivalent I can probably give. And Godwin went for like 17. So you got him basically right at his value, essentially. I guess another example we could use would be like Adam Thielen. He's right around Adam Thielen's, and Adam Thielen went for what, 21 to Andre? So yeah, right about his value. So we paid the value for Henry. We paid a little more for Hill. We paid value for Kittle. Okay, I mean, good things. But where's the deals? So we can go to 63. We take Amari Cooper, $17. I mean, I like Amari. We're building out a really good receiving core now. So now we have 2 good receivers, wide receiver, tight end. Amari Cooper could probably be an average team's number 1. So with Hill, I mean, that's terrific. He was tremendous with Dak Prescott. Obviously, Dak got hurt, but he's never actually had a season better than 10th in fantasy. He just doesn't get enough volume, and I think he usually finishes as a top 20 receiver, but it's rare he's in the top 10, so he's in that in between. It's like a top 15 receiver or so. But I think, he might not get as many catches as he did last year, which is surprising even with Dak. But CeeDee Lamb is coming. Michael Gallup's got to get his. Even if they're in shootouts and the defense is bad, I don't think they'll be relying so heavily on Cooper. So I could see actually a step back in receptions, maybe 85. But he'll get his 1,000 yards. He'll get his 6 touchdowns. He'll be a rock solid, high end number 2 receiver, low end number 1 receiver. He's basically around Kittle. So $17. Again, good value, but still no deals. So we've built out the receiving core. We got to start running back. What else we got? We take Baker Mayfield for $1. He's got a really good O-line. He's got really good weapons. I don't think he'll have enough passing volume to be worth starting because he's in a very run-heavy scheme and he doesn't run the ball himself. But I guess, if you want a backup quarterback, you could pick him up. Surprised he's still on your team, to be honest. And then we spent 17 on Melvin Gordon, which I'm kind of yeah. I mean, we did Charlie's video, and I talked a lot about Javonte Williams, so I won't go too much into that. But the way I see it is the Broncos' back-end schedule is really, really easy for running backs. If they can just stay in those games, running backs are going to get a lot of play because those rushing defenses are bad. However, I can't imagine that the Broncos drafted Javonte Williams very, very high, traded up in the second round, 3 picks out of the first round, to have him sit behind Melvin Gordon. Now, to my credit, I'm not really sure what the Broncos are doing at running back. They let go of Royce Freeman, who's now in Carolina. They let go of Philip Lindsay, who's now in Houston. So really, it is the Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon show. And I know Melvin Gordon currently is the starter, so there's the possibility that he sticks around and he holds Javonte Williams off all season and keeps the job. But man, I have a real hard time seeing that occurring because Melvin Gordon's just not that good. He got almost 1,000 yards last year, and he got 9 touchdowns. He was a startable running back, but he didn't really catch anything. He got 32 catches. He's missed at least 2 games, most of his years. So at least 2 games in 4 out of the 6 years, I want to say. He's 28 now. I think he'll put up consistent RB2 numbers while he starts. I just really highly question if he's going to start the whole season or if this is not a 50-50 timeshare. So I could see 700 yards and 5 touchdowns, but I just think he's going to take a step back. I think at some point, Javonte Williams is going to take this job, and Melvin Gordon's going to go the way of, maybe Jamal Williams to Aaron Jones, maybe even more so, depending on how much they trust Javonte Williams. I will say he's not going to fall off a cliff, despite my dislike for him. He's in an offense that wants to run the ball. I can't imagine a Vic Fangio offense led by the former Chicago Bears defensive coordinator with Pat Shurmur at offensive coordinator now, the former Giants head coach who loves to run the West Coast system, and they love to play defense, and they brought in Teddy Bridgewater to limit mistakes. I can't imagine all of these things. All of these things tell me run-heavy offense. They scream run-heavy offense, despite wasting picks on Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, who are immensely talented, and they do not use enough. Anyway, don't want to get into that rant. Point is, I suppose he's a good number 2 for now. I just don't know if you can rely on him for very long. I think, considering the running back prices, 17's a decent price for him. But you basically now, we have, 1, 2 running backs. We have technically 3 pass catchers. Backup quarterback. And we're essentially priced out of the auction. I think your next best play was Devin Singletary for $4. which I won't get too much into, but he's the starter going into the year in Buffalo. He was really good as a rookie. Last year, he lost some target share to Zach Moss, but the real issue is Josh Allen is basically the number one running back, so he's a decent stash if you think he can break out. I don't think this is I think this is a Zach Moss year, which is why I drafted him, but I'll get more into that in my own. The point is, Devin Singletary, I guess, is like the flex. Yeah, currently he's your flex. So that's kind of where we're riding high. I think he's going to have another decline year, unfortunately. Just not anything he did wrong. He's not a great pass blocker. He's not a great pass catcher. So really, I liked him so much because he's a really good rusher, but if Zach Moss could do all those things better, then what utility does he have? So, yeah. Okay, I guess that's your flex. And then from there, you just kind of got stuck with dollar players. So we won't go too much into it. Like, you got the defense. I guess Matt Ryan's your starter, and you're hoping for like a bounce back year. He was back end starter last year, so he was like 12th. So I guess he could start for you. But there's no Julio. He doesn't run. I don't know if they're going to pass as much without Julio, even though they took Kyle Pitts. He's like a back end. He's no different than someone you could find on free agency, if I'm being honest. You could pick up Tyrod Taylor today off free agency in our league, and I would see no real difference. I might even prefer Tyrod simply because I know Tyrod's going to get a ton of play. The Texans are bad, but the O-line is actually good. It's like, okay, good's a strong word. The O-line is decent though. Like they got a really, really good left tackle. They got a decent right guard and a startable center. That's not great, but it's not bad. It's about average. It's mediocre. So, but the point is, Tyrod's going to get a ton of play time. He's going to get a huge leash to just do whatever, and he actually runs the ball. So I could see Tyrod Taylor being better than Matt Ryan or Baker Mayfield. So I don't really get it, spending money on either of them. And then, again, you're capped out, so like you started taking defensive players. But, I mean, I guess it makes sense because you couldn't take anyone on offense. You took Malcolm Brown. I mean, I like Malcolm Brown. He's the backup to Myles Gaskin. I just don't think he's going to get much play. I don't even think he gets maybe gets like 650 yards on the season, maybe a handful of touchdowns. Maybe he starts for you in an emergency. I like Gabriel Davis. I'd like him more if Emmanuel Sanders hadn't come, but now he's like the number 4 receiver behind Diggs and Sanders and Beasley. So I like him, but he's just kind of like a flyer guy, and you got to hope for an injury at receiver. Sterling Shepard, same kind of deal. I mean, I know Brian was talking up Sterling Shepard last year, but he's never healthy. They brought in Kenny Galladay. They drafted Kadarius Toney. Darius Slayton's still there. Evan Ingram's still there. Like, I don't really know how much gibberish I need to tell you about a bad Giants offense with a bad quarterback. But not a believer, sorry. Too much stuff going on. It's not the most talented player there. He's not even in the top 3. Then we took a tight end like Austin Hooper. I mean, high-paid tight end. That's cool. Cleveland uses him to block a lot, so that's not actually helpful in fantasy. But, sure. So, yeah. This is a very short video. I'm just going through the review of the players. But it's kind of like Sarah's. There's no depth. There's no upside. And, yeah, do you know who Mike Davis is? Do you know when you make a big investment in something to basically protect your asset and maybe get the handcuff or try and get some upside somewhere, young players, maybe a rookie if you can't afford the rookies, young players in breakout roles, something like that. And there's none of that. I guess you could say maybe Gabe Davis is one of those plays. I suppose possibly Singletary if Zach Moss gets hurt. Maybe he can be a good flex, but you're already starting him at flex. So, I mean, the team is kind of like, the team will be competitive just because your receivers and your core is very good. Again, it's kind of like with Sarah. You got a 5-person core, but nothing really else. I guess maybe Singletary, if he does break out, and Josh Allen doesn't soak up all the red goal line touches, he could be a good flex for you. And maybe, but now we're really relying on Buffalo. Also, I don't really understand what it is with you guys and taking like extra linebackers and stuff. Like, bro, it's a 17-week season. Stop carrying that extra linebacker. Go find something useful. Like, I don't know, a running back since everyone's going to get hurt anyway. Come on. If you want to carry an extra linebacker like middle of the season, I kind of get it because, maybe you can play the matchups. But like at the very start of the season, you're telling me that you want to carry an extra defensive player on your bench when you and I know that there's going to be injuries and you want to have a handcuff. Like, it would behoove you to not be in the same situation that you were last year when you had Chris McCaffrey and to pick up the handcuff to Derrick Henry. Or, possibly even pick up handcuffs to other players, depending on if someone else made the same mistake. I dropped Tevin Coleman last night. I think Tevin Coleman is a talented yet older player. He's flawed. I think at some point, Michael Carter in the Jets' backfield, much to Justin's credit, will take over that backfield and be the starter. But that being said, today, as I speak to you, and you are watching this, Tevin Coleman is a free agent in our league. Well, about to be. He's on waivers. And he is currently the starter of the New York Jets. You can't tell me that that's not worth more than Austin Hooper, who's like the blocking tight end on the Browns. You can't tell me that that's not worth more than Matt Milano, the hurt linebacker, who is now your backup linebacker on the Bills. Come on now. Like, that's not true. It's simply not true. So, I don't know. Again, it's kind of like Charlie's just like, oh, let me go get this wide receiver. Oh, this is a good deal on a wide receiver. Oh, I'm having a hard time getting running back. Of course you're having a hard time getting running back because you don't draft any of them. You're just like, oh, well, I see all the deals at wide receiver. Well, of course there's wide receiver deals because you're going to be able to get any wide receiver. If every offense has 3 wide receivers and there's utility to pick them up, of course there will be good wide receiver deals. But if you're just going to spend all your money at receiver, there's not going to be any money for running backs. You're not going to get good dollar running backs. I got Tevin Coleman for $2 and I ended up dropping him, not because I don't like him, not because I don't think I see value in him. I just wanted the handcuff for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I figure Edwards-Helaire is hurt. I might as well get the handcuff and be safe with it since I invested so much capital in getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You've invested so much capital into Derrick Henry, but you didn't learn the lesson from last year, and that just tells me you didn't really do the research. There was no plan. So now I'm going to go on a bit of a rant with draft strategy. So bear with me. So for some people, like Mac, we'll give Mac as an example. So Mac doesn't do a ton of research because if he gets so much information, it wears him down and it slows him down. It's just not good for him. Someone like myself, I do lots and lots of research. I love digging into it. I love getting into the meat and the bones. I love going through things. I love learning about stuff. Like, that is how I was aware of Marquez Callaway. That is how I picked Michael Pittman to be the number 1 in the Colts. That is how I picked Rondell Moore, who's a rookie receiver for the Cardinals, who I'm really high on. Like, I really enjoy that. I'm not saying you got to do that. You could be Andre, who doesn't do any research at all. You could be Patrick, who does some research, finds out these breakout players he likes, and finds out some price points that he likes, and goes for it. But if you're going to you got to be able to have a foundation of knowledge from somewhere. If I say to Andre, hey, who's the starting quarterback for the Bucs? Obviously it's Tom Brady. But I'm also able to say, hey, who's the slot receiver for the Jets? And he can tell me it's Jamison Crowder. There's got to be a base of knowledge where it's just like, okay, I know all of these players on these teams that have value with this and what have you. I usually tell people, especially in the auction, and I think most of the out-of-town guys followed it. You ought to make a list of 30 players. Just look at 30 players, some odd players. They could be star players, they could be bad players, some odd list. But throw together a list of 30 players that you like. I would imagine don't get just like the 30 top players, but, just a list of 30 players or things that interest you. And then in the draft, try to get 10 of them. So, like, some of them could be star players that you really like. Some of them could be, like, a back-end player no one's ever heard of. Case in point, look at Robbie this year. I was looking at this guy, but I had already spent all my 6 running backs. So when he picked Tony Jones Jr., I was like, oh, I know him. Wait, is he going to beat out Latavius Murray? Does Robbie know something that I don't? And he did beat out Latavius Murray. Last year, I picked up James Robinson off free agency, and then I foolishly let him go because I thought Devontae Freeman would win the job. Robbie picked him up. Credit to him. And it helped him win a ring. So, I'm not saying you have to know every player. I'm not saying you have to do tons and tons of research. I'm not saying that you got to know everything for everyone and you have to come in with a plan. You got to know and you got to attack. I'm just saying, just have a general plan of like what it is you want to do. When I go into the draft, I want to be like, do I want 3 running backs? Do I want star receivers? Do I like the price points on these players? What are some teams I might like? Just general thoughts like that. They don't all have to be coherent. You don't have to follow any real strategy. But it's good to just, kind of think about these things at times. I'm not discrediting you. You made the playoffs. I did not last year. That is a credit to you. You made a very good trade for trading away Christian McCaffrey last year to Mac. That is a credit to you. I think you are a good manager of a team in fantasy. That is a credit to you as well. I think you had a hard time. This is the first year of auction, so I don't blame you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not saying anything berating of you. I hope this doesn't come off that way. If Charlie frustrates me, I'm just disappointed in you and Sarah because I know that you could do better. And it's hard for me as the commissioner because my first goal for my team, my own team, is to win a title. I would really very much like to win my own league at some point. But even if Andre makes fun of me for that, the second thing I would like, if that can't come true, is I would like to keep our trophy in Tampa, at least. I could see it. I would be aware of it. Obviously, I mailed it to Robbie. But the thing that's hard is all of the out-of-town players, I guess the exception is Stefan currently, but the rest of the out-of-town players, Brian, Justin, Mac, Ryan most years, Robbie as well, they're all very good. They all have gotten very good at fantasy. It's taken time, but Robbie has a title now. Ryan has a title. Brian has 2 runner-up finishes. Mac has runner-up finishes. I guess among the 5 of them, the weakest could be, you could say, Justin, but Justin has gotten better. Justin is more math-oriented, and you can tell with the way he does trades. And sometimes, he'll do things that I don't particularly agree with, but Justin very consistently overachieves. He's constantly a team who on the back end of the schedule does very well. It's something that I've noticed, just patterns. So what I'm trying to say is, it would be great if I could get some help in the town from people in the league to be like, I don't know, be good consistently, because right now I'm really, really scratching with like Andre and Hannah. Like, thank you, Hannah, for being there 2 years in a row, good drafts, but like, yeah, no, I'm constantly just being like, all right, I guess it's just something like me, Andre, possibly Patrick and Hannah, just like figure this out, especially this year. So yeah, no, please, help, thank you. I'm not saying the team's bad. I know I'm ranking them very low, but I just think you had a hard time with it. I see no upside with Sterling Shepard. I see no upside with Austin Hooper. There is definitely no upside with Malcolm Brown or Matt Milano, who, by the way, is injured. So, like, you're carrying an injured, who was also injured last year, backup linebacker, instead of just the handcuff to your running back, your star running back, who the entire team is built around. Like, that makes literally no sense. doesn't make sense. You're carrying a backup quarterback. Maybe Baker has a good season, but here I am, a regular person making videos about fantasy football, and there the Browns are, a $1 million football team who doesn't want to give Baker Mayfield a contract extension because Josh Allen got a contract extension, and Baker Mayfield thinks he ought to be paid like Josh Allen. So if the Browns don't believe in the quarterback, why do you? Just food for thought, man. So, yeah. Again, we don't gotta do all the research. We don't gotta get in the bones of everything. We don't gotta make spreadsheets. We're not do any of that. Just a regular basis of knowledge. Be like, hey, I read about this player and I heard, he's kind of good. I think he could break out. Or I had this player last year. Also, by the way, that is one thing I gotta say. I'm surprised you did not go for Kyler Murray again. Kyler Murray was good for you. Why did you let him go? He only went for $5. I know that people don't want to spend money on quarterbacks, but you can't tell me spending $2 on Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield is better than spending $5 on Kyler Murray. Come on now. That's not true. That. I know quarterbacks are, you don't got to pay a lot for a quarterback, and I do like Fitzpatrick, but, $5 isn't much. I'm not saying, you got to spend, a mountain here, but, come on, throw $5 of your $200 budget on a decent quarterback, a very good quarterback, instead of trotting out, back end, hopefully starting quarterbacks and Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield. Come on now. Let's be real. So, yeah, I think that's everything. I hope that rant didn't make any sense, or made sense, but that is my point when I ask, do you know who Mike Davis is? Do you know what steps to take just to, properly prepare yourself for the journey? And you didn't do it last year. I was hoping you'd do it this year. You haven't yet. Technically, I'll give you a hint. Technically, the backup running back to Derrick Henry is currently on another team. However, he is injured. So there is another running back somewhere on the Titans, currently a free agent in our league, who is backing up Derrick Henry. So yeah, if Derrick Henry goes down, and that guy's still a free agent, chances are someone will spend a lot of waiver money to pick him up, rightly or wrongly. And you can't tell me the possibility of that is worth less than a backup quarterback, an injured backup linebacker, or a backup tight end. Yep, can't tell me that. So that's all I got. Season starts Thursday. Yeah, I hope I answered your question, Rich, that you actually didn't have. It's more of a rhetorical question, but it's a question I asked myself after your draft. So that's the question. Do you know who Mike Davis is?